actual A block, as it always remained to me, went up, it was farmland all the way around. And if you look where you go around the college, you will see it's still quite a lot of green grass and farmland. It was a place called Chaplash Farm. It was compulsory purchased by the local authority because it was felt this was the best place to build the Wolverhampton College.
I'd remembered the building as a child being built because I only lived just down the road in Whitmarines, you see, so we lived in Sweetman Street. And my memories are of it being a farm because my mum would come down to this part of the town to buy some eggs. Not actually from this farm, but one off the Paget Road. So the road, Paget Road, didn't go through to Compton Road. It just stopped and there was a farm.
It was basically fields, just a cottage farm. The farm was on the other side of the road. And it was just fields and, you know, walks, because living locally, my wife and myself do a lot of walking. So we used to walk, you know, along the canal and across the fields and that. I remember it being built.
Necessity said that college needed to be built, and that's where it was built, in a good part of the town as well, because it was felt this was the best place to build the Wolverhampton College.
My first impressions of this building, and not what other people might think of, like the concrete structure from the 60s, because I don't think I actually had an initial impression of the building itself. It was just that it was so big, and would I get lost in here? It's changed quite a lot, but I remember it being a friendly place, and that hasn't changed. And there is something about this building that's warm and inviting, and I think it's the people. And so I never really had an impression of the building. The people that worked here gave me the impression, and it's still the same.
Oh, I mean, I think it was fabulous. You know, it was a modern building, and you know, it was just very futuristic. If you go back to 1962 and 3 when it was being built, it was quite nice. You know, everybody thought this is going to be a good education establishment.
The building was quite nice and clean. I lived locally, so I saw it being built. And it was about a third of the size it is now, just the main block as you came through. And I had the privilege, if that's what you want to call it, of taking one of the first classes.
I got off the bus, walked down Paget Road. Now a lot of students all along, milling around, talking with people and coming into the college. I noticed on the college gates there was a heraldic symbol, which was like a shield. And being quite interested in history all along, I looked at that, and if you go outside, it is still there. So that is quite interesting in a sense. As I came through the gates, I thought, what a large building. And it was 4 stories. It was a single building on its own then, set in beautiful surroundings, very few houses. And as I walked into the front, there was someone there to greet you, which was really quite pleasant, because although I was 20, it was quite different to walk in as a student. And then we all went into the hall that was then, and we were dissipated to the different classes we belonged to with our course tutor that was then. He actually came and collected us, and we went to our various classrooms to have our timetables and things like that we were given.
Well, when I first came to the college as a student, I'd previously been to Bilston Girls High School, and that was my only experience of education other than my junior school, which was Ettingshall Junior. And it seemed huge because there's the 2 blocks, there's the 4 stories. At my other school, Bilston Girls High, there were only 2 stories, no lifts. And so it seemed huge. And it just looked like every other college that I'd ever seen in pictures or every other public building all seemed to be of a similar design. One of my classes used to be on the 4th floor in A block, and I was just amazed at the views that you get from the top floor across the city and over to Compton and Finchfield and those different places.
I did A-levels, I did things like A-level history, I did A-level geography, general studies. And it was unusual because most of the students here, and I don't think there were that many students as it is today, were here as engineering students or, you know, vocational students, business, IT and that kind of thing. So we were a little bit different, and I think we were in a privileged position really, because all the teachers were in a sense teaching A-level for the first time as well. So I think we did get very, very good tuition. I remember the teachers very, very clearly as being very, very good.
Well, having come from school, which we all went through, and you sort of sat there rigid and you didn't argue and you didn't talk and you didn't. I found the atmosphere within the college was very, very good. It encouraged students to talk to each other. It encouraged students to challenge politely if you didn't agree with something with the staff. It was very, very important that you had your own ideas as well as learning. There were two different processes. One was a learning process of knowledge into your mind, and another one was development of the individual.
It is very good, very friendly, and if you ever needed any help, and all of the staff was very helpful. But on the other hand, it was a very kind of a regimental kind of atmosphere in those days than to what it is now.
The lecturers were always called Sir or Madam in those days, and when we first went in, we used to stand up when the lecturers came in as a mark of respect, and that continued throughout quite a long time, well until in the 60s. Then in the 70s, lots of changes came, and you didn't seem to stand up, but that was as society goes on. So.
When I came here to do typing, it was like a typing pool. Every desk had a typewriter on it. And now we've got computers, so it's far more modern than it was then. But the aim was the same, that it was to get people into employment or to enhance the skills of their employment. But the classrooms themselves haven't changed. In fact, well, they've probably been painted and decorated, but the windows are the same, still the old metal windows. But it's what makes this building what it is.
As a student, I used to play for the college football team, and which was a really good experience. Really, we used to go and have competition with other colleges. Looking at the football sporting facilities, we went to play football with other, like in Warwick, and I can always remember going there and winning the games and all that, and then the after parties and things of that type really. And then winning I think that was the last game. I think we won the inter-college championship at that time.
Well, as a student, I remember Mr McNichol in the geology class. He was like a little bouncing robin. He was like one of these very small, active men, and he was moving around all over the place and very knowledgeable on his subject, very enthusiastic about his subject. And of course that infused us. So I used to really enjoy those classes and used to feel very welcome.
The students haven't changed, they're still the same. They come in, they're either good and they want to work, or they're bad and they don't. So we either say, oh yes, we can help you do this, or can you stop talking, can you stop eating? I haven't stopped saying that for 33 years. The biggest change is mobile phones. Can you please put that mobile phone away? That's my new one. But they're the same, they all want to learn, but some of them want to learn more than others. And there were good ones and there were bad ones. There were nice ones. And you just get on with the students as best you can. But they haven't changed, because I don't think teenagers do. I speak as a previous teenager myself. I'm sure I haven't changed.
But I always think of people who, as they get older, will say, oh, this young generation, it's nothing like my day. Well, I'm sorry, they'd have to come here and meet our students, because they're exactly like any day.
Well, the staff were extremely friendly, and I was lucky in my job that I wasn't totally tied down to engineering department. Inevitably, you had links with other departments because of, for example, use of rooms. If we had free rooms, the other departments were allowed to use them and vice versa. So there was a close relationship between the deputy heads and the heads of departments and senior staff, certainly.
Our staff all met together. Sometimes the library staff couldn't do it because we have a counter duty, so we can't always get away to have breaks. But when we could, you go down there, every member of the staff was in the common room. We all had tea and coffee together, cakes sometimes and biscuits. We ran a raffle, we did a tombola, we all put our names down, we joined the staff association. We had a massive staff association and you paid so much money, you know, if you want to go on trips. And we had organised trips, theatre visits, etc.
In the summertime, we used to have a sports tournament. So the person who was in charge of PE organised competitions in all kinds of sports, and then we had a big prize giving for all the people who'd won those competitions. So we don't have any of that sort of thing now.
First AGM was in December of '93, and it's been going ever since. And the whole idea was, as the Constitution says, was to keep old friends in touch, mainly through social activities. And that's been the case ever since. As soon as you meet somebody, it's almost as if you haven't left them from 12 months ago. And inevitably, within a few seconds, the old stories and anecdotes and funnies come out in the conversation. Do you remember so-and-so and so-and-so? It sounds dreadful, very dreadfully old hat, but it's fun, and it keeps us in touch. So the Retired Association has been a great success, really.
There's been lots of changes over the last 20 years with the courses that we offer. But I think one of the best changes I've seen was the introduction of the BTEC courses, and that students now realise they don't have to do the academic route. Yes, it's preferable to some, but not preferable to all, and that they have more choice. That's the biggest change I've seen, and more choice that will take them on to higher education and good jobs.
I think in the early days of my time at the college, there was more of a sort of a personal tutor approach to the whole group, and staff showed a little more, well, they had time to as well, I have to say, but they showed more interest in what the whole thing about the student. That doesn't sound very good, but the holistic way that the students would learn, that their social lives, what their aspirations were, and try and get a sort of an overview of what that student wanted out of the course.
People I've taught, right, like if I go to New Cross Hospital, you know, there's doctors there I've taught. There's pharmacists that when I go to chemists I've taught. I've got to dentists, I've taught dentists, you know, because I teach A-level chemistry. So those are the all success stories really, to be honest. And some of them still keep in touch with me anyway, so.
The facilities have seen so many changes here, so many changes. I remember when there was a kind of big staff room for all the staff. I think there's a kind of small room for the staff now, but there was this enormous staff room. So when there was a break between lessons, you'd go down there and, you know, there'd be a trolley brought in by a woman and she would sell you cups of tea, and everybody would exchange stories about students, what they taught and that kind of thing. It was a very much more, it seemed to me, laid back and relaxed sort of atmosphere.
I do remember going into the staff room for the first time, which was a huge room. Everybody used to meet there, and it was blue with smoke. And the ladies from the canteen would be there at break time, because we had fairly set break times then, and they would be selling us hot sausage rolls, toast, cups of tea, cups of coffee. So we were very pampered in a way compared to nowadays, which is much more democratised in so much as we all go and queue up with the canteen all together in one long line. There's no separation of anything, because at that time as well the staff used to have a little segregated part in the dining hall. The dining hall hasn't changed very much from what it is now. When I first arrived, the reception was at the far end of a very long, thin, narrow corridor, and it used to get very congested and it seemed to be out of the way. And the staff room was also on the ground floor. So I remember it just being a bit of a labyrinth. That's probably the best way of saying it.
Well, I suppose for the time, because we're going back 30 years, they were quite different from how they are now, because we obviously didn't have any of the whiteboards or any of the technology. In fact, we didn't even have the white roller boards. It was all chalk in those days. I do remember having to wash my hair every day because your hair was always full of chalk, your clothes were always dusty from chalk. So we don't have that anymore. I've kept a few pieces of chalk just as a reminder of what it used to be.
Teaching resources to help teachers have changed significantly. I mean, when I started again, I was using the bander machine, creating one master and then rolling it through the bander to get 20 handouts. And that limited you to what you could actually produce, because you tended to handwrite these bander masters, whereas now you can word process everything and it's easier for you to save it on a disk and then print out more or adapt it to a different situation, whereas you'd have to rewrite a whole master.
I remember the facilities when I was a student. I was absolutely amazed. There was a super library that you could use. You could take out large numbers of books. There were newspaper clippings, and there used to be the old microfiche system that you'd sort of scroll down to find out what you needed to find from the library. Whereas at school it was always just the old-fashioned card index, or just go to the shelf and find what you needed.
Yeah, I mean, they were very good facilities. For me, I mean, I'd come from a school, remember, that didn't have anything like those facilities. The new St Peter's School hadn't been built, so it was very much an old building in the town centre. So we had, it's strange to think of it now, state-of-the-art facilities, as you would have in the mid-1960s. So there was a good canteen. As I said, there was very good sports facilities, and I remember there being a very good library. The classrooms were well appointed as well, as far as I could see. Obviously not with this kind of IT equipment we have today, but yeah, it was new, clean, bright.
The classrooms were quite bright, old-fashioned desks that you lifted up, but that was the way it was. Not like today with computers. Gosh, I didn't even know what a computer was in those days. But gradually the computers came in as well, and that was an added moving on in technology. Whenever technology was available, the college had it. The resources department was really good. Things like OHPs, overhead projectors, which students, I don't think a lot of them even seen them these days. They were what you could call iconic, as well as the building. And it was a new way of teaching instead of just board and chalk.
I can't imagine there not being a college here. I'd love to see something really creative happen with this campus. I'd love to see maybe some architecture students, some of our art and design students get together and do something innovative with the exterior of the building. You know how you see, I can't remember the name of the artist, but there's an artist that wraps buildings and he wrapped the pyramids, and I'd love to see something like that happen here. Something different that draws the press, that gets you excited, that makes you realise that the building looks drab and old, but what happens inside is fantastic for the young people in the city. I know the original plans were to build another campus behind this existing building. It's hard to imagine where the money would come from for all of that, but if the money could be found to do something with the existing campus, that would be fantastic.
I remember being on so many committees where it was being talked about. I guess it would still be talked about today, but it was all so much dependent on finance. And it certainly needs it. I think the building has served its purpose well. It's a great location, you know, residential side of Wolverhampton. But I also think, well, you know, because I live pretty close, this is ideal building land, and somebody else might be thinking that too, you know. So it would be a sad day, but other colleges have done exactly the same thing. The name lives on, doesn't it? Wolverhampton College, or the City of Wolverhampton College.
I know that there are many things not right with this building. You wouldn't start from here if you were starting from scratch. Having said that, I still like this building. I feel comfortable with this building. The facilities mightn't be wonderful, but I think in a job it's not necessarily always about the building, it's more about the people. And I'm quite happy with this building. You know, I think if it were changed, that would be another very traumatic thing to go through, but I suppose if we were starting from scratch, we would have a much better purpose-built design than we have at the moment, because there's lots of, as I mentioned earlier, knocking down walls, building walls.
I think looking at the building now, I still know it was Wolverhampton campus. It will always be Wolverhampton campus to me, but I think to call it Paget Road campus is very wise. Whether it'll be here in the future, I don't know. Whether the upkeep and it can be maintained in the way it needs to be maintained is another matter. What students perceive as a good learning environment, to what I thought was absolutely incredible when I came in the 60s to see it. This wonderful building built out of nowhere on a farm called Chaplash Farm. Whether it's what they perceive now, or they have to have a super duper wonderful building to learn in, I don't know. I look at Bilston campus, and that is a modern, iconic building. But looking at Paget Road, it still has the atmosphere, it still has the beauty. And I will always think of it as a beautiful building. I hope it will never go, but you don't know in today's environment and today's costings. You just don't know.